I want to talk a little bit about the Bitcoin price multiplier effect. A lot of people have laughed this off because the ETF didn't go up in a straight line. And as I said, from my perspective, there was a slight hampering of what's gone on here with the Bitcoin price correcting for multiple reasons, as I've highlighted in my previous videos over the last week and a half, 2 weeks since the ETFs launched. But what's quite important here to realize is what's actually going on in the underbelly of the market and how that impacts the price multiplier effect that everyone knows and loves. And even if you don't trust it, deep down in your heart, it's absolutely real because it's just mathematics. So let's talk about what's happened here, right? What have we seen in the first 12 trading sessions of the ETF coming out and starting trading? We have seen $5 billion of capital rotation, probably more today. It's probably like $5.3 billion of capital rotation moving out of GBTC. We had people who were selling GBTC who had no business owning GBTC. They were traders. They were people who were in it for the short term. There were people who weren't holding it. They were people who were arbing it. There were people who were holding it in their treasury reserve for their scam exchange. There were all these other buyers and holders of GBTC that have decided to rotate out of the asset, and still GBTC is the king of the ETFs. No matter what anyone says, GBTC is the king. They kept their fee at 1.5%. Even I thought that was a stupid decision. And yet they remained the king with the most amount of Bitcoin in their control. Now, this is obviously the first 12 trading sessions. These players are not joking around. Over the next year, we may see GBTC dethroned as the largest Bitcoin holder. But right now, even with all the bleeding that they've had of Bitcoin, they're still the #1 Bitcoin holder. And it's very important. A lot of people are discounting the importance of these GBTC outflows, and they're saying that the only thing that's important is the inflows going into the 9 new ETFs. Now, that's true to a certain extent because these players are humongous in the space. But to me, GBTC outflows are important because they represent the old buyer of Bitcoin. This is something I've been trying to tell you for months. The ownership guard of Bitcoin is changing. The old buyer of Bitcoin is transforming into this new buyer of Bitcoin. And what's quite fascinating is the old buyer of Bitcoin, in my opinion, was younger. Right now, you're going to get the boomers that have a vision, the boomers that can see the future, the boomers that believe in America, believe in themselves, believe in the United Kingdom, believe in the country that they're from, the country that gave them all the opportunities. They believe in their future. They want to leave a legacy for their children, for their grandchildren, for their last name. The people who have fought for this opportunity are now coming into the game. And that's why the outflows from GBTC are important, and subsequently the inflows into the new ETFs are also important, right? Because the outflows of GBTC to me represent the old buyer of Bitcoin, and the inflows into the new 9 represent the new buyers of Bitcoin. What I can tell you is, based on what we can see, it looks like the retention rate of capital in Bitcoin is about 45 to 50%. If someone can give me other data than that, then I would appreciate it. But right now it looks like 45 to 50%, which means 50% of that 5 point something billion dollars has just been left in cash or put somewhere else or done whatever else that it was going to do with, right? And that's okay, I guess. People who bought Bitcoin or GBTC when it was a couple of dollars and now get to sell it at 40 something dollars, like they're just like, hey, I'm going to spend some money, I'm going to enjoy my life, and that's okay. But this new buyer of Bitcoin that's coming in, that is the client of Fidelity, that is the client of BlackRock. BlackRock, by the way, has more than $2 billion of Bitcoin now. They control 50,000 Bitcoin in their fund inside of 15 trading sessions here. Now, a lot of that new buyer is moving over to BlackRock, moving over to Fidelity because they understand the long-term potential of Bitcoin, and their life doesn't change if Bitcoin goes from $10,000 to $43,000. Their life doesn't change. Their life is still great. This new buyer that's coming in already has the dream car, already has the dream house, already takes the vacations that they take, already have children, already raised those children, already paid for university. This is the new buyer that's got. This new buyer is now preparing for, generations rather than, the next 20 years. And so this is very, very important. And the fact that the ETFs have managed to rotate $5 billion of capital out of one fund and into another demonstrates the stability of this market and demonstrates the ability for the American capital markets to play with this much capital in such a short period of time and move it from one to another without a hitch. It's been a fantastic launch period, but a lot of people are wondering what's going on with the capital inflows, what's going on with the price multiple effect. How is it that all of this capital can move into these 9 new ETFs and the price sort of just dumps, right? Right now we've recovered for 43,000, and that's spectacular to me after seeing the effects of what was going on with the price dumping. So here's the main thing to understand. This new buyer is a forever hold buyer. Yeah, majority, right? I'm talking about majority. Sure, there's going to be some people who sell out and trade in and out and use it as a trading vehicle. That's cool. But the majority of these buyers are long-term hold investors, and this is great. We had to dump the Bitcoin that the short-term minded people were holding into the market, and now we can take it out from and put it into the funds for the long-term holders of this asset, and that is fantastic, right? This rotation of capital is important, but what impact does it have on the price multiple? It's very simple. As I've pointed out many times in my price multiple videos, it makes me wonder, right? Do people actually listen to these videos that I'm putting out? Because as I've mentioned many times, price multiple on the upside and the downside is based on the net inflows, not the total inflows. So just because you've had, $2 billion go into these funds, you got to remember, you've had $5 billion be dumped into the market, and that's just from GBTC. That's not including the people who were sitting on the sidelines in all these weird exchanges around the world dumping into the market, the people who bought Bitcoin in the run-up, hoping that there would be a sell the news event, which ultimately happened, and then dumping into that sell the news event. There is a lot of selling pressure that's come into here, and I'm very proud of Bitcoin for being able to put up with the amount of selling pressure that it's been faced with, and we're already back at 43,000, right? It's remarkable as far as I'm concerned. It's remarkable. Sure, the price has been disappointing, but you have to understand the rotation of capital that happened, and I believe that rotation of capital would have been better served if there was a delay between approval and trading, but obviously there wasn't. They shut the market off, approved it, before the market turned on, it was trading. So, this is what's going on here. There is a net negative on the inflows into the market. That's why the price came down. And what have we seen? As I pointed out, I put it on a tweet last Monday, I think, that I think we would see the GBTC outflows decline very rapidly, and we may even see a day where we start seeing an inflow into GBTC within the next 3 weeks. And what's happened in the last week since I've put that out there? We've got 2 more weeks to go, right? The outflows went from $500-600-700 million a day down to now like $250-300 million a day, and that's continuing to decline as we head into this week. And what impact will that have? That will mean that now the sellers have started getting exhausted, and the buyers can start taking over, and the net inflows can truly start entering the market, rather than what's been happening, which is net outflows here. So the bull market multiple is still in place. It still works because it's just mathematics, and it is going to start taking into effect now as we enter this net inflow stage of this Bitcoin ETF. And again, we are 12 trading sessions into these ETFs. I would like to reevaluate at 90 trading sessions into this ETF. Remember, today I looked on Yahoo Finance, and Yahoo Finance, right, one of the best tech companies in the world, running this amazing website for all information regarding stocks and everything else. They haven't figured out how to put on their website that IBIT, the BlackRock fund, holds Bitcoin. They haven't got a column for Bitcoin. for Bitcoin holdings. You go there, you type in IBIT, it's basically showing like a phantom fund that has $2 billion in it. There's nowhere that you can see that the main asset of the fund is Bitcoin. So if Yahoo Finance hasn't figured this out, we can see how slow this is moving at this point. Now, here's the thing. I want you to subscribe, because in the next week or so, I'm going to start doing some videos that are going to actually demonstrate what is actively happening with this price movement, how you can actually benefit with this, because we've now got a covered call fund in place, and its first distribution was 33%. Now, it's not the most ideal one, but I'm going to do a video on that, so I want you to subscribe to the channel, because it's important to understand that income funds are now going to come into this too. So we've got Bitcoin, we've got the ETFs. The ETFs are rotating capital very healthily. There's a bunch of selling that happened that needed to happen that has not re-entered the market. There's a bunch of buying that has re-entered the market in addition to new capital. So we've seen some net inflows, and the price has started to move up again based on those net inflows. But just remember, the Bitcoin, the bull market multiple, the term that I coined months ago, that's based on net inflows and net outflows, right? If you have $1 billion coming in and you have $1 billion being sold, you've had a net zero effect. So the multiplier effect doesn't work in that scenario. You need to have the, let's say there's $1.1 billion of buying and $1 billion of selling. The net effect is $100 million that is going to cause that multiplier effect, and that's what we're starting to see now. So I just wanted to make everyone calm. The bull market multiplier effect hasn't died, hasn't gone anywhere. It's still working. It worked to the downside for the last couple of weeks, and now it's about to start working to the upside here, depending on what happens with the net flows. But pay attention to what's going on. The GBTC outflows are equally as important as the inflows into the 9 new ETFs, and GBTC is still the king. And again, I've been holding GBTC since 2020. People told me to sell it. I said there's no way I'm going to sell it, because one day there's going to be covered calls on it, there's going to be leverage on it, I'll be able to borrow against it. That's another video I'm going to do. I'm going to do a video on my perfect ideal time to borrow against my Bitcoin ETF position, so, and the options for that. So make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. But the bull market multiplier is still in effect, and now we've got news that Charles Schwab, who is bigger than Fidelity, is going to come in with their own ETF. And by the way, if Charles Schwab comes in with their own ETF, anyone from Charles Schwab is watching this, the way I would do it to just take over the market, because I like Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab, from my experience, is the best asset management house available. That's just my personal experience from the customer service and everything else that they have. But if I were you, I would go sub 10 basis points, and I'd have custody by Fidelity. And you have those two, and you've got a game-winning ETF there that you'll come into, and then we'll have a competition, because who's going to be the top three, right? Everyone is trying to angle to make GBTC bleed. The GBTC bleed is slowing down, and it may even come to a halt. Why would it come to a halt? Because even though the fee is higher, if you have more liquidity and you have more options because of that liquidity, then you may need to use that fund, even if you have to pay more for it. So there we will. I personally still believe that we're going to see a day of net inflows into GBTC within a few weeks, and I think that bleeding has stopped. We'll see if that comes true or not, but ultimately, the bull market multiplier effect is still in place. Pay attention that it's based on net inflows, and understand that this rotation of capital is what's important. And now we've got Charles Schwab thinking about coming into the game. We've got I just saw a tweet from Van Eck that more advisory firms are putting that product on their portals for people to buy. So there is a lot happening here in the background. The capital is starting to move into Bitcoin, and if you haven't gotten to your 1 Bitcoin at a minimum, right? If you haven't gotten to 1 Bitcoin at a minimum, you are losing time doing that, and you've had a great opportunity with the price dip that happened in order to do that. So I hope you executed on that. I'm proud of everyone who has gotten to 1 Bitcoin. I'm seeing people who are messaging me from the Philippines that they've gotten to 1 Bitcoin, and all I got to do all day is listen to these crybabies in America, the United Kingdom, Australia tell me that they can't get to 1 Bitcoin, and it's unfair of me to tell people to get to 1 Bitcoin. Listen, got people from the Philippines, got people from all over the world talking about how they've managed to take this bear market opportunity and get to 1 Bitcoin at a minimum, because you are going to start being priced out. As soon as this bull market multiplier starts demonstrating to you what it can do, you are going to be priced out from that opportunity. So get to that 1 Bitcoin if you haven't already. And by the way, when I say get to 1 Bitcoin, I'm not talking about people who, have to work 3 jobs and this, that, and the other. They are gonna do what they're gonna do. I'm talking about people who have $2 million of real estate, and you haven't figured out how to generate $45,000 to $50,000 of liquidity to get into 1 Bitcoin, and you're sitting there going, oh my God, what if this thing goes down? While BlackRock, Fidelity, everyone got $2 billion a piece in their fund. GBTC is rotating capital out from speculators to long-term holders, and you will never ever get another chance to own this asset ever again. That's who I'm talking to. You need to get to at least 1 Bitcoin to protect the wealth that you have generated. So subscribe for those videos, and again, take this seriously. I'm very proud of everyone who has managed to get to 1 Bitcoin. By the way, like I've been saying in my last videos, my time on social media is running out, right? At the end of the day, as soon as Bitcoin goes to $100,000, which I think it will do by the end of the year, if not before the halving, then really my message is now, because in order to buy something for $100,000 that you don't know nothing about, you need excess liquidity. I would say you need an excess liquidity if you've really got a speculator's mindset of like $300,000. Well, the only people that have got $300,000 cash lying around is if they're like $2 to $5 million of net worth. And at that point, right, I think the message has already been put out there and it's expiring. So my time is running out on social media. I don't know whether I'll be interested to do, social media public stuff again. So if you want to keep in touch after that time runs out, check the description. There's a link in a way that we can keep in touch after that happens. But ultimately, despite all of that, there's always only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.